Hello and welcome to this final first look exploring session looking at the blind beggar of Bethnal Green. Yes, we're going into Act 4, Scene 2 to the end of the play with the people that we have in the room. There's going to be some extreme doubling at times. We may talk to ourselves. Hopefully we will talk to ourselves with different voices or things so that you have a clue who the hell's speaking at any one time. Hopefully it will be clear. Otherwise we'll enjoy it even if you won't. I mean, ultimately, you know, whether you enjoy the video or not, I'd love to say that's my primary consideration, but really this is all about us. So, without further ado, we're going to be reading, as I say, from Act 4, Scene 2, with these wonderful readers, as we find out whether the end of the play continues to keep up the relative level of enjoyment and hijinks that we have come to enjoy. So, reading The King today. Yes, the King is coming to town, is...
Sarah Blake, formerly of Bethnal Green, but now of Germany.
Yay, we're getting closer to Bethnal Green all the time, even though we're now also technically the furthest away. Or almost not the furthest. No, not the furthest, because we still have Lynn in the room. Reading Bess, Sir Robert, and Captain Westford is...
Hello, I'm Lynn Freitas. I am a mild-mannered college composition teacher by day, and I'm as far as Bethnal Green as you can get almost. I'm in the northwestern United States.
Reading Hadland and Old Strowd is...
Alan, based in Suffolk, watching the snow flurries.
Yes, I got hailed on earlier. It was great fun. Reading Tom Strowd is...
Briony Sparrow, actor in Lincolnshire.
Reading Young Plainsey and Gloucester is...
Alexandra, I'm still no closer to it, but Bethnal Green is in my heart.
Reading Momford, Swash, and Cardinal is...
Lois Potter, where there were a couple of snowflakes here too earlier.
Reading, of course, by the time this video goes out, it'll be the middle of summer, so they'll be very confused as to what the hell we're talking about. Reading Canbee and Old Plainsey is...
Oh, that's me, sorry. Steve Longstaffe, no snowflakes, but I do consider myself a snowflake.
Oh.
And I am your host, Robert Crighton. When you're tired of Bethnal Green, you're tired of life. So, without further ado, we're going to dive into Act 4, Scene 2. And we have the return of the end of Bess, who still doesn't know that the blind beggar that she is with is in fact her real father, even though she refers to him as father. But that's a term of affection, unless in between scenes he's told her who he is, but I don't think he's done that yet. So anyway, Act 4, Scene 2, enter Bess and Momford.
Father, dear father, succor me from shame. Young Master Plainsey is entered our house, hath shut the fore-door up, detains the keys, and swears to kill me if I do not yield to his abhorred and intemperate lust. Help me, good father, or the garden pail, that I may call for succor on the green.
No, daughter, sit thee down. Sit down by me. I call you daughter, being your own desire. If you be nobly born, as you report, why should you, to escape your own distress, leave me, poor man, alone and comfortless?
He comes.
Enter young Plainsey.
Let him. Sit down, I say.
Oh, how shall I escape reproach this day?
Peace. Heaven may give my bisoned eyes their light, stretching these crooked limbs straight and upright.
Art thou fled hither? Think'st thou his weak strength can free thee? Come, why should this frosty ice clap his cold arms about thy flowering spring? Strive not, Bayard. If thee ado, by heaven, I'll draw my rapier and with one thrust send thee to Charon as a passenger.
Oh, I am feeble. Pray ye hurt me not. If it be true, as I have heard it told, you married lately with Sir Robert's daughter?
Father, I hate her, and she scorneth me. She pules, she sighs, she pines, she leaves her meat, she flies my bridal bed. She bans, she raves that ere her father forced her to be mine.
Good sir, comfort her.
Comfort thou me, and I will comfort her.
I will not yield consent to such a sin. I scorn to be a prince's concubine.
Wilt thou then be my wife?
No, I have sworn to die as pure a maid as I was born.
How can she be your wife?
My wife will die.
Mm, Tarry that time.
All lingering I defy. Old man, I'll make thee happy by thy grant. Fair maid, thou shalt be blessed in thy consent. Deny me, and I'll turn a Terence, murder thy father, then cut out thy tongue, deform thy beauty with the hand of wrath, lastly make spoil of thy virginity. Then leave thee wretched, where if now thou yield, gainst all reproach and wrong, I'll be your shield.
Help me, good father.
Bid a sear-dried reed oppose thy sapless strength against a green oak. See me, I am all youth, all love, all beauty. Thou beauteous, lovely, youthful, 'tis thy duty to love thy like, which duty if thou shun, my hate thy beauteous youth shall overturn.
Good sir, stand but aside a little while. I do remember, since myself was young, the strong effects of lust. Both she and I must yield to your desire.
I'll rather die.
Nay, say not so. Listen to me, my child.
Ay, marry, father, if thou canst persuade her, I'll make thee rich, and one day marry her.
Fear nothing, child, but use him gently, and I will fit his hot lust presently.
Come, what resolve you? Either yield or die.
Sir, I commit my daughter to your hands, but I beseech you, woo her with fair words. She may, without compulsion, yield at last. I'll in and weep, for what can I do more? You're rich and strong, and I am weak and poor.
Hold, father, take that gold to comfort thee.
For money, few men now shame infamy.
Oh me, do you forsake me?
A while I do, but Plainsey, I'll anon be even with you.
Exit Momford.
Now, pretty virgin, how are you resolved?
I yield, yet though I yield, I bend my knees, and ere my spotless virgin shape I lease, let me relate my many miseries.
Come, do not stain thy lily cheeks with tears, nor fashion to thyself a form of dread. Thou talk'st of loss of shape. A fair lass bears a shape as goodly in lost maidenhead, and far more lovely. Then, with smiling grace, they boldly look upon a lover's face. Try once, then be assured thou'lt not refuse, hadst thou 1,000 maidenheads to lose.
Impious temptation, I defy thee, Plainsey, setting my weak strength to resist thy lust. Off with thy poisonous hands. Help me, heaven!
Enter Momford, disguised like a serving man.
But a poor earthly man, guided by heaven, will keep thee from this deed, hateful as hell. Plainsey, forbear, as I respect thy life.
Thou autumn-shaken leaf, thou bare anatomic, thou withered elder pith, thou shape of death sent by that blind exorcist to disturb the pleasures that young Plainsey's heart affects, vanish. I know thou art but lither air, thy hand fell lightly on me, like thin smoke that is dispersed among the spreading clouds.
Makes thou me a ghost? Come, take thy weapons, thou shalt soon try. I am both flesh and bone.
And fight. Plainsey is down.
Hold, villain, hold!
Now, boy, I am a man, uncle to that wronged maid, the blind man's brother, who, quaking, sits within, mourning his child. Art not ashamed? No, thou art impudent. Westford and you are fleshed with villainies. Think on your plot about the banished Momford. If you'll repent it, I will use you well. Make means that Momford may be proved clear, as you know best his harmless innocence, and on a soldier's word I do protest, Momford, make your peace and sue your pardon.
What dost thou mean? What's this thou talk'st to me?
I talk of treason, rapine, slander, wrong. Go, get thee to Sir Robert. He's hard by. I saw him walking up along the green. Stand not to talk. If thou accept my offer, I'll be a faithful servant in this business, preserve your credits, and confer with you. If not, resolve on this. I'll to the king, and there accuse you of this heinous wrong.
Wilt thou stay here until I fetch Sir Robert?
And exit young Plainsey.
I will. Go. Maid, help the old man to bed. He's shrewdly frighted by this violence.
What reverend man art thou, or angel rather, that speakest these wonders of my banished father?
Go, honorable maiden, Momford's heir, a little help the old, weak, blinded man that weeping sits within, trembling for dread lest Plainsey had thy chaste youth injured. Help him, and then I'll tell thee many wonders.
To hear but one word of my father's weal, I'll undergo all work, all pain, all toil.
Exit Bess, presumably into the shack, looking for Momford, who's on stage talking to us.
Poor girl, how glad she is to hear the voice of Momford's honor. With what nimble speed she hies to help a shadow. There's no beggar, no poor blind man that wants her comforting. I wonder what she'll think when she shall find only a staff, a scrip, a gown, a bonnet, and ne'er a body to make use of them. She comes, and is amazed as she comes.
Enter Bess.
Where is the blind man, I beseech you, sir? Alone I find his garments in his chair. Do not amaze me. Tell me where he is.
He is within, fair maid.
Aged man, I should give credit to your milk-white hairs. Tell me, oh, tell me, why, within a chair, the case is left. Are you a conjurer? Where is the blind man that I called my father?
I am no conjurer. Stay but here a while, and I will bring the blind man to thy sight. Stay here. Look on this cloudy element, and I'll produce him to your heart's content.
Exit Momford.
Alas, where am I? Sure, this beggar's cell is a base cottage to betray mine honor. I took him at the first to be a comforter, but now I see he is expert in shapes. But why should I dispraise him? He did free my body from the vile Plainsey's luxury. Methinks he has been all my joy to me. Why should there now arise this difference?
Enter Momford like a beggar.
Daughter, where are you?
Pray, where is your brother?
I have no brother, no kin, but one daughter.
He's an enchanter, sure. I'll shun him. His ways I'll shun.
Daughter, where are you? I conjure you, child, by the true honor of old Momford's name, by Momford's faith that was by fraud exiled, you would not let his honor die in shame.
Help me, ye powers that give all mortals power, to escape this heavy and too troublous hour. Spirit, avoid me, or if thou be no spirit, surely it is a damned magician. Fly me, thou alterest shapes. I do not love thee.
Oh, thou dost. See here, the gold thou sent'st thy father, when I, even I myself, brought these fair arms to wicked Westford's gate. Poor child, be not amazed. I am thy father, Momford, by traitorous practice banished.
Ah, me that I have lived so long unknown. I still had such a hope.
Fair child, forbear. I know Sir Robert Westford and this Plainsey, or one of them at least, will come forthwith. Say you the blind man is in his bed sick, and call me uncle. Come, be comforted. Our son of honor, in despite of guile, shall brightly shine in England's hemisphere. We have been clouded long, but maugre hate, truth will advance desert to honor's state.
and exit. So at last, the disguise has been unearthed through an interesting process. It's interesting wondering, why Momford precisely does some of these things of, going, go and have a look, see how the old beggar's doing in there. Oh, he's not there, but it was just his stuff on the chair. And it's all right, I'll go in and find him. And then comes out again, going, well, yeah, it's fine. Well, where's your brother? I don't have a brother. I only have a daughter. Hang on, you're weird. Yeah, saying strange. You're a conjurer. Go away from me. I'm your father. Ta-da! None of which is strictly necessary at all.
Right.
It's
No, it's
just
fun for
sort
the
of for
audience.
effect. And there's an awful lot of this play which is about effect, I think. And that's before we even get to the earlier material, which is, doing other business as well, which we should discuss. But yes, thoughts in the room. Lynn?
Yeah, if you can pull off the quick changes, that could be pretty fun.
Mm.
However, let's go back a bit
Mhm.
to the beginning of this scene.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so young Plainsey's marriage has not been consummated, evidently, but I'm sorry, he has passed the threshold of redeemability. I'm going to be really unhappy if he and Bess end up together. Sorry, maybe that's just me.
Yeah, let's hope not. Yes, we were talking last time. I think Alexandra was bringing this up. This question of stakes, and I think Stephen touched on it as well about this thing of does anyone feel that anybody's really at threat? Everyone sort of it's all quite light and it's all quite fun, and then we have this coming into the narrative. I mean, we know we don't like Plainsey, and we know that probably everything's going to be fine, but this is certainly, and okay, last time we did have a possible hanging, which I didn't say at the time. I was finding legally quite dubious because, it's not like they found a body of the murdered man or anything. It's not an unimportant element of any prosecution for that kind of act. It's not impossible, but it's, it just feels like nobody dotted the I's or crossed the T's on that particular point. Anyway, it's pushing the play in a slightly different direction, even though it solves it with a fight, which is our traditional way of solving problems in this play. It's with a fight, and that more fights to come. Spoilers. Alexandra's eyes light up. Thoughts from the room. I'll go to Lois and Stephen.
Yeah, I mean, the point about the body, we had the same problem, I think, in the Dutch courtesan, where, free will deliberately disappears, but Malheureux is, I think, going to be executed for killing him, even though he didn't. I mean, it's a bit different because they actually have made up a story, I think, that he killed him, but still, there is no body, so it's the same situation. Yeah, I mean, apart from that, I mean, you could think that, if you didn't know that Momford was in disguise, you could think he was being pretty despicable at the beginning, telling Bess, no, don't run away from this murderous rapist who's dashing at you. Just stay with me because I'm your, poor old man who needs your help. But, in the context, the audience presumably is licking its lips, waiting for the big turnaround that's bound to come.
Stephen, and then Alexandra.
Yeah, I was thinking about Lynn's point, because I'd completely forgotten about the start of the scene by the end of the scene, because we get this sort of weird thing, don't we? We get, the sudden screeching of brakes outside and, in comes the Sweeney in the shape of stakes, sort of, everybody hands in the air sort of thing. And then we get this incredible, to me, metadramatic moment, which harks back to these kind of merry world plays of enchanters everywhere. I mean, it seems to me to be referencing plays, which kind of screeches it away from that at a tremendous speed. And if you were doing it today, I mean, there's got to be something of a kind of farcical element about this. It's this kind of like noises off in the cottage, as it were, sort of quick change, slamming door, climbs out the window, all of, the vicar's coming to tea, all of this sort of stuff. Where's my trousers? But they're in the same scene. Yeah, and so that is just, I mean, it'd be hard to pull off, I think, but it's really striking, isn't it? It's almost like, contractually obliged to include stakes, but we'll do our best to kind of move you away from them as quickly as possible. It's really striking.
Alexandra, then Lois.
I think following on from Stephen, from your point, I think the farcical nature of in through one door and out the other in a completely different costume sort of thing, is a build up on the previous farcical doors gag thing that we had with Act 2, which if you play it as not having passage of time between scenes, is basically people go into the cottage, people run around outside the cottage, those people disappear, people come out of the cottage, say some stuff, go back into the cottage, people. So I think it's one of the things that this author or this group of authors is actually doing really well is not repeating a gag but building on it. And I wanted to bring attention to something that we were discussing outside of the recording about Bess recognizing her father. So now that we've done this scene and we've had this moment of she's basically dealing with three different people, the blind beggar, the blind beggar's brother, and her actual father. What is interesting is she's not so dumb as to not consider that this is the same person in two costumes as soon as she understands that, hang on a second, he's not in the other room, and he's claiming to be his own brother and all of this. So she's kind of picking up on the fact that this is a person. I can't remember what she says exactly about thou alterest shapes, so that it's one person changing between two characters. She just hasn't picked up on the fact that it's her actual biological father. And what we were saying before was it's possible, if you consider that she's very young, let's say she's something like 16 and her father's been away at war for 7 years, it's very possible that she wouldn't recognize him with all that passage of time. So if we could do this in the performing of this play, or in the kind of arranging of those circumstances, if one could make that clear, I think it would become acceptable for an audience rather than ridiculous. It would only get ridiculous right now at the end with the doors farce and then revelation, happy times.
Lois.
Yeah, I think, I don't think there is such a clashing of gears as we were suggesting, partly because what I said at the beginning is that I don't think the audience can possibly think that Momford really means to sit there being a feeble old man while his daughter's being raped in front of what would be his eyes if he supposedly had any. And I think that it's all sort of set up. I think he's deliberately spinning the whole thing out. Partly because the authors are doing that for the benefit of the audience. This play is often, I think, related to a whole group. They think there was a series of quick change plays and that there was somebody who was a quick change artist. I'm not really sure about that, because I think these costumes could be changed fairly quickly, but I think this must be written for the same actor who played Gloucester in the Look About You, because it's so similar. It's similar character too, somebody who has a background as a warrior but who now is disgraced and is running about in different costumes. And the other thing, I think I mentioned that I'd done this particular scene at a conference, or I did a very heavily cut version of it because it was a conference where you were allowed, I think, something like 13 minutes for your entire presentation, including a performance. But what I was curious about here was just how long it would take Momford to change off stage while Plainsey was attempting to force Bess, and she was fending him off and trying to spin the scene out. And it's clear that they can fight as long as they need to. Or she can struggle as long as she needs to until he gets changed and comes running back on again. And we could only do that bit of it because there just wasn't time for the rest. But it is actually quite an interesting problem, and the audience surely must be aware that what they're seeing is presumably somebody racing around and changing clothes and breathlessly coming on, and they must probably applaud by the second entrance, if he manages to do it right. So I think all of that kind of distances the threat of rape, which is clearly what the scene is supposedly dramatizing.
Anyway, we need to move on from that and see where else the play takes us. Act 4, Scene 3. Enter Sir Robert Westford, young Plainsey, Canbee, Hadland, and Tom Strowd. Yeah, you were in the previous scene, Strowd. You're back on in this one.
I'm so sorry. Dare you trust Strowd in this same stratagem?
Tush, fear him not. Since his father hath given over all honesty, lives upon the spoil. Come, ye mad rogues! Here's 3 of us, here's £30. Each man take his share, and with his share his charge. We're all for this money, to cut the throat of the blind beggar, his brother, and his daughter.
How? Cut their throats? I'll see ye hanged first.
Jack, thou and I will keep court at this end of the green, and waylay the old spruce serving man. He shall be our share, and Tom Strowd, thou shalt lie at this corner for the wench. For this way she comes unto the conduit head for water, she falls for thee.
Fall out of her, and ye can but agree a price.
Nay, let me alone for falling upon the wench, I warrant ye.
Master Plainsey and Sir Robert, do you keep about the old man's cottage, and when you see his daughter gone, knock out his brains with his crutches. Thus have you heard your several charges, each man to his court of guard, and keep their quarter.
What it with good discretion, son Plainsey. I like it well that you and I go walk near the cottage, for it much concerns us to see this beggar dead, upon whose breath proud slander fits to blemish our good names, and blast our honest reputations. Shake hands and part in hope that when next we meet, their death shall lay all danger at our feet.
And exit Sir Robert Canbee and Hadland.
Pray heaven it may. A word, good Master Strowd. Although you had in charge to kill the maid, I do entreat you use some special care in your attempt, and in the stead of death, tell her I love her dearly, and that love enforced this shift. For though the wench be poor, yet in the glass of my affection she seems right wealthy, fair, and virtuous. Commend me to her, Strowd, and since my wife has given her latest farewell to the world, tell her I do intend to marry her.
Ready, Swash.
Meantime, convey her to my farm at Rederiff, and there's 10 angels more for thy reward. But be as trusty to me as the thought that sleeps within thy bosom. So, adieu. I trust the riches of my hopes with you.
And exit young Plainsey.
Do so, and I do not deceive you. Let me die like a dog on a pitchfork. This is excellent. Hire me to steal away the wench I am in love with all myself? This comes just in the nick, i' faith. I desire no more but to meet her. Who's yonder? Swash? How now? Whither away so fast, Swash, huh?
Enter Swash.
What, my young master? Why, I'm going to the Three Colts to saddle your father's gelding. We both ride into Norfolk this afternoon.
Better and better still. Thou comest as fit for the purpose as a pudding for a friar's mouth, so dost thou. I do but stay here to talk 3 or 4 cold words in hugger-mugger with the blind beggar's daughter, and I'll ride down into Norfolk with you. And as God weed hat, yonder comes the mother.
Enter Bess Momford.
What content attends this country life? Here proud ambition's emulating eye plays not the find fault. Our thatched shed is built without the reach of treason's bloody gripe.
To her, master, 'tis an old saying in our county, long-standers are but short doers, wenches cannot away with them.
Swash, I think thou sayest true. I'll to her. How now, pretty mother? Whither are you going so fast?
Alas, good sir, I am a poor man's child. My father is the beggar of this green, that lives upon good people's charities. I am a-going with this earthen pitcher to fetch clean water from the conduit head. We eat the herbs that grow on the spring's brink, and count the conduit water wholesome drink.
Nay, you drink water? You are no hostess for me.
You are no hostess for me? Fie, I'm ashamed of you.
Why, what should I say to her?
What? You should have praised her little foot, her handsome shoe belonging to it, and then come to her round knee, and then, master, to her belly.
Ay, marry, Swash, and I were there once, I'd do well enough. But pray thee, let me alone. I'll talk I'll talk to her well enough. I warrant thee. This is to the purpose. Wench, you know young Master Plainsey.
I do remember I have seen the man. He loves my father well. Why names he Plainsey? I hope he'll do me no more injury.
Fie, what have you to do with Plainsey? Come to your own business, as thus you must come upon her. O Lady bright, pity this knight, that in this plight is thus tormented. If you be willing to be a billing, I dare hold a shilling, you shall be contented.
Ay, marry, Swash, this is excellent, i'faith. Couldst not thou have taught me this? But all's one, Swash. I'll win her without these ballads, I warrant you. Well, wench, to come to the point, there's young Plainsey loves you well, and he has hired me to watch for thee here and carry thee to his farmhouse at Rederiff, where, if he finds thee soon at night, thou art like to lose thy maidenhead afore morning.
Unhappy wretch, that Plainsey sure was born to make our house and family a scorn.
She begins to yield, master. Give her not o'er, to her again, master.
I warrant thee, Swash, now I am in. Let me alone. Well, wench, this is the plain English on't, and thou lovest me no worse than I love thee. Instead of carrying thee to his farmhouse at Rederiff, I'll have thee to the church and marry thee, and of a poor beggar's daughter I'll make thee a wealthy Norfolk yeoman's wife. What sayest thou to it now, ben ye?
Alas, my father is a poor blind man, and I am all the comfort that he has. I am his eyes to see, his feet to go, his hands to dress him. I being gone, he's left eyeless, handless, footless, comfortless. Yet, if you love me as you make a show, come to our cottage. Though our state be poor, we live content, and that's a good man's store.
Lay thee, Swash. I must go into her cot house, she says. Well, wench, and thou what not go with me, thou art ne'er like to see thy father, nor his shed more. For Mr. Plainsey and Sir Robert Westford has hired a couple of false knaves to cut thy father's throat. Therefore, an thou canst love me, say and hold. Go with Swash and raise the town, and I'll go back and save thy father's life, I warrant thee.
I'll go with thee. Love ye, I'll do anything so thou wilt save my aged father's life.
Let me be hanged like a dog, and I do not. Swash, go you with her and raise the town. I'll but cross o'er the summer lay by the Broomfield, o'er Goodman Dawson's close, and be with you presently. Whither art thou going? Thou dost not hear me?
Yes, I must go by the Broomfield. I hear you, sir. Come, wench, come.
Nay, since you are so forward, hold. Take you the picture, I'll go with her myself. I would not for anything, but I had turned coney catcher. Here had been a black day with somebody else. Come, wench, dry thine eyes, never cry for the matter. The worst is past. Thou shalt see the case altered, I warrant thee. I'll save thy father's life, fear not.
Oh, I carry the pitcher. There, let it lie. I'll after them.
And they exit, but more is to come in a moment. But we'll just pause there because, Tom Strowd's... clearly this isn't the kind of activity he thought he was buying himself into. He was thinking, exciting con man adventures, and he's going, we're going to murder some people. Would you like to kidnap a young lady? Okay, part of it he's going, I quite like the young lady. This could be an opportunity for me in a slightly awkward way. He's clearly not into the whole murderiness. And young Plainsey, walks on stage and continues to endear himself to us by basically immediately saying, hi, would you like to do some killing? Yes, we would, because we will do killing things. So Canbee's true to his name, can do. Canbee. And then, of course, we've got Swash basically trying to tutor Tom into, sort of attempting to woo Bess, and Neither of them are necessarily very good at it, though Swash seems to have a better grasp of the basic concept. Thoughts from the room? Who wants to leap in on this one? I'll go to Alexandra, then Lynn.
I just want to make a really quick point about character evolution, because we mentioned this yesterday as well. The way in which Tom Strowd is developing from one appearance to another, and he's got ups and downs, and it's really fascinating. But even other characters like young Plainsey, we first saw him mildly disagreeing with the marriage that was being forced upon him, and then we next see him attempting rape, and then we next see him organizing murder. So it's evolution, even though all it is in how we are discovering these people as opposed to necessarily changes in their nature. But it's really fascinating if we play it as change in nature. So if Strowd, is having all these developments as a presumably young man learning how to human, and we are here to watch that's really fascinating. What I'm finding very difficult to stomach is the evolution that Bess is having. Through not recognizing the blinking obvious, down to the situation she was just in, where she was under threat and was enforced to yield, or was kind of accepting, but wait, I have to tell you some things first, and then in this position where she's saying to Strowd, whom she's presumably barely met, yeah, I'll go with you. I'll love you. Whatever. Just save my father, which is entirely the opposite of the attitude she was displaying a minute ago to the other guy. So yes, that's what I'm finding difficult.
Lynn, then Lois.
Well, just to bounce off that last point, Tom did said, "I'll take you to church and marry you," and that's a huge difference. And even though she doesn't know him, she knows Plainsey's a bad one. So when he says, "When my wife dies, I'll marry you," she has no reason to believe that's true. But when this yeoman's son says, "I'll marry you first, and we'll make it legit, and then proceed from there," that seems like a better bet. So I don't think she's like, "I'll throw away my virginity to save my father." I don't think that's what's happening there. But I also am interested in Tom's character. I'm a little disjointed between the day before yesterday, and today. So I'm not actually perceiving it as a sort of path. He seems more like a weathercock. It's like he's a good person, he's a bad person, he's an amoral person, he's a person with some kind of conscience. So, my reaction to this was, I really wish I could feel confident that Tom is going to try to save Bess's father's life, that he means it, that he's basically going to try to do the right thing. It's like, okay, murder's over the line. I'll take people's money, but I'm not going to kill anybody. I wish I could feel confident that Tom was going to carry through on that, and I don't.
Lois.
Yeah, I don't know. I sort of see Tom as like one of these, I don't know, Bob Hope, or I'm trying to think what sort of comedy figure. It seems like somebody out of the 50s rather than now, but, naive and capable of saying almost any goofy thing, but basically with his heart in the right place. As for Bess, I think she's just stalling for time here. I think she knows now that the blind beggar is actually a famous warrior from France, and her father, and he's already told her in the previous scene, just keep stalling him, and actually does this rather potentially comic thing, I think, of telling young Plainsey, just let me tell you the story of my life and all my problems, which is clearly to try to keep him quiet, because she realizes something or other is going to happen. And I think it's the same here. She's saying, I'll do anything to save my father, but it's really just, at least this guy isn't going to rape her right away or murder anybody.
Yeah, and just a little passing note of young Plainsey, he was saying earlier, I'll happily marry you once my wife is out of the way. Well, he has just mentioned in passing she's died apparently, so or she's gone.
That before too, actually, in an earlier scene.
So she's we haven't really properly touched on that point. This just quietly, that went well. It's like, character who vaguely existed is just being quietly washed out of the way because it's sort of not important at this point in the story. And it's like, maybe elements of the plotting of this have slightly got flanging edges that are flapping around and hitting people in the face. And every so often there's just these little lampshading lines just to make sure, so we can move on to the next bit without it not getting in the way. Just comb the fringe out of our face. Alexandra.
A darker reading of that is that he said to Bess quite prominently, I can marry you. What? How? I will make it so that my wife is no longer. And then in the next scene that he appears in, presumably a very small amount of time has passed, and he has followed through on that offer. Could quietly dispensed with her as opposed to the fact that she's just magically disappeared. Which would be a much darker reading of young Plainsey.
Yeah, so we've got some little things flapping around, but we're not finishing the scene technically. We're still sort of, even though the stage is sort of empty, the action is continuing because, of course, Canbee and Hadland have gone off to try and take out Momford, and the action resumes. Enter Momford driving in Canbee and Hadland.
I'm hit!
Old! And now comes to the noble blood of the whole Trojans. Old!
Nay, do not think you desperate castaways, though time hath clad me with the rind of age and hung his snowy livery of my face, though I am old, that I want strength to fight. If you be men whose fortunes have been shaped through by the rough arm of want, or servitors that have consumed your living in the wars, I have a poor blind brother on this green who, by the alms of charitable men, and with the wealth I brought him out of France, hath store of gold. And had you shown your wants to him or me...
I scorn to make my state known to e'er a prowling beggar on ye all. We know your brother has gold. 'Tis that we come for.
And we'll have it, or we'll die for it.
And they fight. Fighty, action. And...
Help!
Yes, didn't go well. Enter Sir Robert Westford and young Plainsey.
What murder? Where's the murderers?
Sir Robert, draw. It is my friend that's wronged.
Nay, I beseech your worship, hold your hands. Though I be old, I am sufficient to answer two far better men than these.
Sir Robert, as you are a knight, lay hold upon one who is not content to rob us in the king's highway, will not likewise taking away our lives.
Upon my soul, you do the fellow wrong.
Nay, son Plainsey, never take his part. How should the beggar here of Bethnal Green get so much wealth as the world thinks he hath, and keep his minion at the beggar's house by such practices? Yield up thy weapons, or set upon him all. I'll answer it.
Well, Sir Robert Westford, time has been the blind man and his daughter did deserve more friendship at your hands. And Mr. Plainsey, I could repeat, but let old matters rest.
And they beat Momford.
What? Do you brave us? Set upon the slave.
What? Is he gone? How did he escape our hands?
I know not. I had a full blow at his left. I thought I'd cut it off.
And enter Tom Strowd.
Ho, 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 Canbee. Pray heaven keep the old man from killing ere I come, and I care not.
What, Tom Strowd? Well met. Where's the wench? Is she safe?
Safe? Dost thou make a question on't? I warrant she is safe enough for telling any more tales. I am no bungler about a wench. But where's the blind beggar and his brother?
The beggar is a devil. His brother is familiar. Old Madge has bit off 150 legs and arms in her day, and yet she could not so much as draw blood of him. He's musket-proof, or he'd died for it else.
She is at Redriff, then. There I sent Strowd. We'll end this task, and then I'll visit her. But here's the cottage. Pull the villain out.
And they knock.
He's both a felon and a murderer.
Enter Momford like a beggar.
What means this outrage at a blind man's door? Our Englishmen become so inhumane that beggars cannot escape their violence.
Leave this dissembling and send forth thy brother, for he hath robbed these honest gentlemen. We followed him and saw him enter here. Therefore dispatch, and either send him out, or else we'll lock the door upon you both and fire the rotten cottage o'er your ears.
Indeed, I must confess I have a brother, an ancient serving man, maimed in the wars under Lord Momford's colours.
For naming Momford, run him through the heart!
Touch him he that dares. As God save me, I'll be his priest that toucheth but a hair of him.
Rowdy, I hope you do but jest with us.
Jest me no jests. Shall ne'er be said Tom Strowd of Harling stood by and saw a blind man murdered. Therefore, courage, old father. Set thy back to mine and cover thy head with thy crutches. I'll take up my lodging on God's dear ground ere thou shalt take any harm, for the pretty mother thy daughter's sake.
And this is where it could get a little bit confusing. Enter old Plainsey, old Strowd, Captain Westford, and Sir Clark.
How now, what quarrels have we here? Sir Robert Westford, it ill beseems a man of your estate to have such a hand in such unlawful riots. Are you there, son? Have you so soon forgot the timeless death of your deceased wife to follow such unseemly practices?
If me so, just take the blind man's part. Thou'rt a Strowd right, Norfolk yeoman right, to take part with the weakest. Well done, my boy. I do forgive all matters that are past, but joy to see they art so well inclined.
Why, I thank you, father, and I forgive you too with all my heart.
Sir Walter Plainsey, you are misinformed. We come with no intent of injury. These gentlemen were strangers unto us. We found sore hurt and robbed by a false thief, and brother to this beggar whom we saw enter his house.
What sayest thou, father? Knowest thou of such a practice by thy brother? Or to thy knowledge is he in the house?
Sir Walter Plainsey, that I take your name. So help me heaven, as I am ignorant from any such lewd practice of my brother's. But since your worship's here, I'll call him forth in person to make answer for himself, desiring you to pardon me a while, for what with sorrows and with cares down pressed, my sightless eyes had need to take their rest.
And exit Momford.
Send us thy brother, and be thou discharged. Master Strowd, what can you say to this?
Faith, sir, 'tis a common saying in our country, you shall know by the market folks how the market goes, and none knows their knavery better than I that was one of their company. Father, do you see those two fellows there?
Aye, son, what of 'em?
Why, these were they that cozened me of my satin suit, and with false reprieve that had like to ha hanged you, and robbed Swash of the £100 too.
These gentlemen?
Gentlemen, as God mend me, a couple of as arrant coney catchers as are pissed, as air pissed.
It's possible, son.
Push. You're a fool, father, you know nothing. I have paid for my learning, and falling into their company, in hope to get some satisfaction for all my losses, it was my chance to be by when Sir Robert Westford and Mr. Plainsey there gave them £30 to murder the blind beggar, his brother, and his daughter. But by my means the beggar and his daughter are alive, and what's become of his brother I know not. This, as I am Tom Strowd of Harling, and a true-hearted Norfolk man, I'll justice against 1, 2, 3, or the whole pack of 'em, when, where, or how they dare, for the very ears and guts of 'em all.
Strowd, you're a nit, a slave, and a peasant.
How? A peasant? I scorn to soil my hands about thee, but, and I had thee alone with a tough ashen gibbet in my hand, and I did not dry bang ye all, one after another, I'd eat no meat but mustard. Sen ye?
Strowd, have a care you speak naught but truth.
Speak the truth, boy, so thou art my son.
And I do not, I'll give you leave to call me Cut. Sen ye?
Sir Robert Westford, this concerns you near, and, son, it touches your reputation too.
But it shall touch his life that authors it. Strowd, you are a villain, and for an old grudge betwixt your father and Sir Robert Westford forged this surmise, as both these gentlemen are ready on their oaths to justify.
Enter Momford, disguised like a serving man.
No more. Here comes the slave that robbed us.
Robbed ye? Of what, I trow? Of your good conditions?
This is he that hacked me thigh like a leg of beef.
Thou liest like a thief.
Are you the blind man's brother?
Sir, I am.
You were accused here of a robbery. What can you answer in your own defence?
Sir Walter Plainsey and good Captain Westford. First, as I look for comfort from above, I never nursed a thought to that intent. Indeed, these gentlemen, strangers to me, did draw upon me, and, as I suppose, by the provokement of Sir Robert Westford and Master Plainsey, sought to take my life.
What reason should they have for that?
Your worship shall perceive. Sir Robert Westford, wounded by Strowd and desperate of life, confessed unto my brother, the blind man, that by the means of him and Master Plainsey, they counterfeited those letters that wrought Momford's banishment. And besides all this, my sword shall justice that first by bribes and then by forcive means he would have forced my niece unto his lust. All this is true, and this I'll justify upon their bodies in the open lists.
Thou darest not for thy life.
Plainsey, I dare. And would my sovereign liege give me but leave, this son should see thy treasons punished.
Wert thou a gentleman as thou art a slave, I'd make thee eat thy words or dig thy grave.
Eat a pudding's end. The old man shall take no wrong, sir.
Sir Robert Westford, your gentility shall not tread down the truth. Long has my soul thirsted for this occasion. For when I saw you falsify your faith, wedding your daughter unto Plainsey's son, that was the troth-plight husband to be Bess Momford, I thought as much as this poor man now speaks, and will in single combat prove as much. He of you both that thinks himself most touched, take up my gage.
Westford, I'll answer thee.
And I'll maintain Sir Robert Westford's cause.
Take up my glove, then.
Give it me, I'll maintain it myself.
This shall justify that Strowd and that base villain that were agreed to murder us.
Aye, is the wind in that door? I'll take up thy glove, but, and I bang not thy coxcomb, hang me, la.
I hope this challenged combat will decide the truth.
Which, heaven assisting and the king well pleased, shall be performed this present afternoon. I'll to the king, and never raise my knee from the cold earth I obtain by privilege of fight, a black revenge for worthy Momford's fall.
And exit Captain Westford.
And thither, Westford, will I follow thee, or borne upon the wings of my just cause, arrive before thee.
Exit young Plainsey.
Each man take his way, St. George and conquest guide our swords this day.
And exeunt everybody else, except for the Strouds.
Courage, my boy. Without prevailing fight, I'll swear Lord Momford hath not his right.
Courage, say ye? As God mend me, I respect them no more than I do a slap with a foxtail. And I do not beat him as you should coil a side of dried stockfish. I'll be bound to go to Rome with a mortar at my head.
Why, well said, my son. That's away.
But hark ye, father, you must know I am to go amongst the court knolls. You must needs let me have good store of money with me. Let not the name of Strowd's be disgraced, I pray, father.
Josh, boy, fear not. Carry £500 with me, and that shall fly ere thou want.
And I'll bring some of my own too, or it shall go hard.
They exit. There's music. There's cornet. So, glove business. I will challenge you to a fight. No, I will challenge. I will take over your glove. No, I will do. Yeah, so that should, I hope, be understood suitably comic as all these things sort of go on. And of course, Momford has to exit to re-enter to be his other self. You know, it's my brother. Oddly enough, it's strange. There are no family photos of me and my brother in the same room.
Yeah. Yeah.
Lois.
Yeah, did you notice he has to exit earlier as well? I mean, that bit where it says they beat Momford. I mean,
Yeah.
clearly they're trying to attack him, but he clearly vanishes because they're all saying, "Where the hell is he?" You know.
Yeah, so they beat him off stage is what
Yeah.
that's meaning at that point. Yeah, absolutely. And so yeah, so again, this scene is playing with that constant exiting and
Yeah.
running on and off, and of course we get more fights or physical action on stage, so the whole sort of murdery plot sort of unravels a little bit, and everybody's sort of slinging mud at each other, and Tom Strowd is sort of just going, they're all bad uns, and we're not bad uns, you're the bad un, and all this stuff is flinging around, and of course we've got the king will sort it out, don't worry, I'm sure the king will sort everything out because there's a lot of stuff that needs sorting out. Briony, then Lois.
I was kind of believing Tom's double agent story there. But then, I don't know, all that business at the end with the money is making me doubt it again and think he's perhaps just a triple agent only to himself.
I think following Lois's thought, I don't know that Tom necessarily knows what he's doing from one moment to the next. He's just sort of bouncing around from things. So I'm sure it's true as he's saying it. Lois, then Ellen.
Yeah, no, I think the great moment in the scene is the final reconciliation of father and son. I mean, I think that's where Tom does come out and say, well, I was hired to kill these people and I haven't done it, and I have saved this girl in some ways. I mean, he hasn't done all the great things he says he's done, but his father has reason to be proud of him. No, I think the bit about the £500 is just that if he's going to be involved in a court fight, he's going to have all the gear, and that's probably going to cost quite a bit of money.
Yes, that's the disadvantage of anything involving the law. Alan.
I think the character note for Tom Strowd is every village has got one.
Yes.
And which of the three Norfolk families he belongs to is a moot point. The land of the six-fingered.
Yes, we live in Suffolk, so we're allowed to say that. The law of neighbouring counties, it's a thing. Alexandra.
2 points. One, regarding the they all beat Momford and then he disappears moment, I was envisaging that with a permanent stage that has a trap door. So you would get this wonderful moment of huddle, 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 he's gone! Which would be, a beautiful bit of silliness, but also of magic. Which I understand if this was performed outdoors touring, that may not have been the case. The other thing I was going to say is Tom Strowd and not knowing whose side he's on or what his kind of principles are at any one point. I think that's what makes him interesting, because he's a loose cannon to himself as well as from the perspective of the audience. And it made me think of there's a line in one of the Pirates of the Caribbean films where someone asks another person, whose side is Jack on, Jack Sparrow, and the answer is right now. So this actually makes him a much more interesting Tom Strowd, and the fact that neither the other characters nor Norrie indeed himself is very sure. But also he's growing a spine. Or he's growing a conscience or a personality through this, and that's really fascinating to watch. And something that Stephen mentioned in the chat, I think, was that this play had sequels, and they were named after Tom Strowd, rather than still being about Momford. So clearly he did graduate into a kind of Jack Sparrow figure.
Well, it's certainly a figure that, people are going to write plays about. I just also want to highlight the point that's been mentioned in the chat, but also I think it's an important thing to note that Canbee's named his sword Old Madge. So, it's the fact that, and this is, it's bit off 150 legs and arms in her days, and yet she could not draw so much blood of him. It's the thing. It's a trusty sword. So I'm seeing this as a sword with lots of nicks and dents and things in it. Trusty even old Madge couldn't get a touch on this guy. So even these sort of minor villains are given little bits like that. They're just lovely things to grab hold on and play with. It's really nice. Okay, Alexandra.
Just one thing I wanted to point out, the con men, true to their nature, are turning the thing that is their attack on a person into a con by claiming that they're the ones who have been attacked and, taking it all the way to court, which is just fascinating. And going from your point, Robert, about, even the seemingly minor villain characters have character and journey. It's great.
Okay, well, it's time, I think, to enter the king. In fact, as this is the final scene of the play, we're sort of almost going back to the beginning of the play. The beginning of the play started off with, fields of France and war and drums and stuff, and it was all very high stakes and a very different universe than Bethnal Green. And so Act 5, Scene 1, we have the sound of the trumpets. Enter King Henry VI, Gloucester, who we haven't seen for a fair while, Cardinal, who we haven't seen in absolutely ages, Lady Eleanor, don't hold your hopes out for a lot of dialogue from her, and lords attending.
Uncle of Gloucester and Lord Cardinal, since all our court has put on smooth-faced mirth only to grace your honoured marriage, embrace each other in the arms of love. And as you join your hands, so let your hearts knit your affections in a friendly league.
Gloucester speaks first, yet speaks he not in fear, as begging Beaufort's friendship, but in love, both to his king and to fair England's good. Yet ere I set my hand to this new league, Beaufort, if any undigested wrong lie in thy swelling bosom, freely speak't, and Gloucester will as freely answer it. But if thy conscience be as clear from soil of hateful treachery as Gloucester's is, give me thy hand, and with thy hand thy heart, which Gloucester will as charily regard as the best blood that's chambered in his breast.
On that condition, Beaufort gives his hand, and from his heart wipes off all forepast wrongs.
Witness this league, lords. And now, Aunt Eleanor, heaven give you joy both of our uncle's love and of this new-born peace. Now, Uncle Gloucester, I desire to know the cause of Momford's treason and his fall, which he hath lately undergone in France.
His fall, my liege, was great, but his offence little, or none, for by Villiers his means, who as a prisoner now attends your grace. I have found out since Momford's banishment that all his accusations were false.
Yet Guines, in which Lord Momford had a charge, was yielded up by treason.
True, my liege. I have known Momford in my brother's days put in great trust, yet never heard that he was found disloyal in his charge.
And, Uncle Gloucester, we have always had his honoured age in reverent esteem. We hear he had a daughter. Where lives she?
Thrust out of all by one old Westford's means.
Methinks 'tis hard the child should not enjoy the riches that the painful father left. Good Uncle Gloucester, let it be your care to see old Mumford's daughter have her right. But what grave man is that?
And the
Sir
grave
Wal-
man indeed is the entrance of old Plainsey.
Sir Walter Plainsey, the bosom friend unto exiled Momford.
Sir Walter Plainsey. By our uncle's leave, I pray stand up. Methinks those reverend hairs deserve a softer pillar than the ground. I pray stand up and boldly speak your mind.
My sovereign liege, your subject comes in love to let you know that divers gentlemen, on what presumption they themselves best know, have undertaken to prove in open field that the Lord Momford, who lately fell in France, was treacherously accused.
Why, 'twas your son that first produced his accusation.
Your grace will give me leave to clear myself, for I was neither privy to that fact nor speak in his excuse. He is my son, but if in malice he hath wronged Lord Momford, let him have justice and the law take place.
Are they resolved to try it out in fight?
They are, my liege, and only wait your pleasure.
Even what our Uncle Gloucester will set down, we assent to.
Herald, fetch them in. See them at all points armed.
And this is where everything in the doubling might fall horribly apart, but let's see how we go. Enter with drum Sir Robert Westford, young Plainsey, Canbee and Hadland. At the other door, we've definitely run out of people. Old Momford, Captain Westford, Tom Strowd, and Old Strowd, and Bess.
Who is the plaintiff?
Aye, my gracious lord.
Reach him the book, and thereon take thine oath that thou art neither drawn by bribes nor hate to undertake this combat. 'Tis enough. Speak truth and naught but truth, so help thee heaven.
Pleaseth your grace, this in a word is all. Sir Robert Westford and Master Plainsey there confessed to a blind man, in hearing of that maid, that Plainsey and himself did counterfeit the letters that wrought Montford's banishment.
Give him the book. Now, answer on thine oath in thy defence.
Then first, my liege, 'tis false. Next, he's a felon, and by force of arms offered to rob these honest gentlemen in the highway.
Then I can hold my tongue no longer. It's an arrant lie, my lord. That's the plain English on't, for I was by when Sir Robert Westford and Master Plainsey gave them £30 to murder the blind beggar, his brother and his daughter. And if I had not been, they had been killed too, so had they.
Fellows, what do you say to this?
Liege, I cannot talk. Grant me the combat. My sword shall prove I am a soldier, and my tongue ne'er knew the art of scolding.
Give him his will. Alarum to the fight.
Oh, stay. For methinks there is some difference both in their years and their conditions. And for we highly prize our subjects' lives, good Uncle Gloucester, let them choose their weapons. It may be a means to save their lives.
And hearten others in pursuit of knowledge. Herald, bring forth all sorts of weapons. 'Tis the king's pleasure that every man make choice of those weapons he hath practised most. Sir Robert, choose your weapon first.
Thanks to my liege, the common sight of these same serving men is sword and dagger. Therefore, I'll choose the sword and target that they are unskillful in. I take the sword and target for my defence.
And I, my liege, because Sir Robert Westford shall not think I'll take any advantage, I'll answer him at his own weapons.
'Tis well. On to the next.
Come, Captain Westford. You have been in Spain and well are practised in the desperate fight of single rapier.
Plainsey, I am pleased.
So are not we. The single rapier is too desperate, and therefore choose some other weapon, or we will have no combat fought this day.
Backsword, then, and please your grace.
So we are pleased.
There, Jack. Methinks sword and buckler's a safe vice.
I'll choose no other, and I had 1,000 lives.
I do. Take your bars of iron and your barn doors, and I do not bang 'em together like a couple of cur dogs, I'll ne'er be seen again.
Sirrah, thou fellow,
Anon.
what weapons wilt thou use?
Weapon me no weapons. I can play at wasters as well as another man, but all's one for that. Give me but an ashen gibbet in my hand, and I do not dry bang them both, I'll be bound to eat hay with a horse, so I will.
An ashen gibbet. What dost thou mean by that?
What do I mean by it, quoth ye? I think you be fib to one of the London cockneys that asked whether haycocks were better meat or broiled or roasted. An ashen plant, a good cudgel. What should I call it?
If there be such a weapon in the court, let one go fetch it him.
Nay, I'll make a page of my own age and set it myself. Swash, bring out my best beggar there.
Enter Swash with an ashen gibbet.
Yes, sir. Here's your blessed beggar, master.
Look, he says, this is in it. And I do not cudgel 'em both with it, I'll give you leave to stick me up at the court gate for a pissling post, so I will.
But 2 to 1 is odds. Rather fight single.
No, they know me well enough. I have cudgelled them both afore now.
Well, if thou dare oppose them both, have thy desire. Alarum, to the fight.
And alarum of some description, and they fight. Fight, and Momford's side wins.
Fellow, dost hear?
Anon,
What should I call thy country and thy name?
sen ye?
The king would know thy country and thy name.
My name? I am not ashamed of my name. I am one Tom Strowd of Harling. I'll play a goal at camp ball, or wrestle a fall of the hip, or the hill turn, with e'er a courtnall of ye all for 20 quarters of malt, and match me height for height.
Lusty fellow. Trust we have too few subjects in our land. Where's the blind beggar and his brother?
Where the blind beggar is, I know not. But here's the pretty mother his daughter. And thou beest a kind springall, speak a good word for me to my father, that I may have her. And as God mend me, and ere thou comest into Norfolk, I'll give thee as good a dish of dumplings as e'er thou laidst thy lips to. So will I. Sen ye?
Marry with a beggar? Mix the blood of Strouds with a tagger? Cast her off, or I'll cast off thee.
Now we shall have a coil with ye. And ye were not my father, I'd knock your pate, so would I.
How's that? Do a no dare.
Strowd, though she be daughter to a poor blind man that long hath lived on good men's charity, do not disdain her. Be her birth as it may, the portion I'll give with her deserves as good a husband as your son.
Bait me an ace of that, good Bolton. Yet would I had her as naked as my nail.
As good a portion as my son, proud beggar. It's not your clap dish and your parched ground can do it.
However poor, good sir, disgrace me not.
'Tis my disgrace to be outworded by a beggar. And I'd not be such a well-moneyed man as thou dost brag. Darest drop old angels with me, and either outdrops other takes up all.
That were ambition in a beggar, sir.
'Twere credit for thee, and thou couldst outdrop him.
So please my liege to give me leave, I'll venture that small estate I have.
We are content. Monk's cares 'tis fit to mix some merriment.
Come hither, daughter. Are you ready, master?
To him, father. Never lose a hog for a halfpenny's worth of tar. Come, old fellow, bring thy white bears to the stake, and thy yellow gingle boys to the bull ring. Father, wherefore do you hang an arse so? They are all our own, and there were a comb-sack full on 'em.
I thus begin,
Aye, and thus I answer thee,
thus I reply.
and thus do I join issue.
I had rather join issue with the mother a great deal, had I.
Some more money, Swash.
Here, master, we'll outdrop the beggar, we'll make guilt sweat else.
Hast thou any money about thee, Tom?
100 angels and a better penny. Pigs of your own sow, father.
There's 20 more.
More yet? Rascal would disgrace me. More yet?
And yet, too, you think beggar had no lice, father?
How now, Strowd? Begins it to be low water with you?
I mean, run aground, have dropped till I can drop no more.
You must e'en burn of the spit, for I have no more oil of angels to baste you, father.
Nor thou, Swash?
Only a broken 3 farthings that I kept in a corner to buy my wench pins with. All this is mine, then.
I not deny it, 'tis true. That was our match, and so, good gold, adieu.
I have brought my hogs to a fair market. Must I lose the mother and all my gold too?
Yes, faith, all's gone, Tom.
This is your foolery, father, and I had done it, we should have had such a scolding with you.
Then, Strowd, where thou before didst scorn my daughter, now I do scorn thy son, not moved through hate. For Strowd, I hold thee a most honest man, for right thou didst unto Lord Montford's daughter, and since thy son did save my poor girl's life, and rescued mine with hazard to his own, this gold, which by our bargain is all mine, I freely give him towards his marriage.
Trust me, a gallant beggar.
Oh, yes, that will be Tom. Sorry.
Yes, sorry, I only just realised. Beggar? He might be a king for his bounty, for he gives away all.
Oh, I know the reason of that. He could beg more. And begging be so good an occupation, would I'd been bound apprentice to it 7 years ago. There was somewhat to be got by it then. 'Tis out of request now.
This is old excellent. Here, carry it to my chamber, Swash, and lock the door fast, I charge thee.
And I meet no false knaves by the way. Canbee and Hadland here had been a simple boon for you now.
And exit Swash, which is a good thing because it's doubled as Momford.
Yeah. And now, my lord, since Momford is proved clear, and his accusers have confessed their guilt, I freely give my daughter to the man who, for the love of Momford, loved of all, will take her to his wife.
For Momford's sake, whose honoured deeds are writ up with the blood of the proud French, were she the meanest and deformedest creature that treads upon the bosom of the earth, Westford would take, love, live, and marry her.
Nay, then, I see that virtue shall find friends. Take her, good captain, and for Momford's sake use the maid kindly.
Why, farewell 40 pence. I have fair fight and caught a frog. Well, mother, though I am no gentleman, I could have brought you to more land than a score on 'em. Thou shouldst have had 40 as fair milch kind to your pail as a man should need to see in a summer's day. 4 yoke of oxen and 3 team of cart horses. Besides, thou shouldst have had thine ambling nag and thy side saddle to a rid on, a little easier than to be jaunted up and down London streets in a leathern wheelbarrow. And then of the other side, there's the old woman, my mother. She would have made thee a vile good huswife, could have taught thee how to make butters and flapjacks, fritters, pancakes, aye, and the rarest fools. All the ladies in the land know not how to turn their hands to 'em. But I'll take my leave on thee with an good night. Moon is up.
And Momford then discovers himself.
Momford!
Westford.
Bold Mumford, living and proved loyal. Thy love, like a rich jewel, we will wear next to our heart. Upon those gentlemen that have maintained and proved faithful, we do confer 100 crowns apiece.
Your grace in this does Momford double right. And noble countrymen, while we do live, your love and valor must not be forgotten.
How is your will we deal with your accusers?
That we refer unto our Uncle Gloucester, who better knows those passages than we.
Since 'tis your will, my liege, then thus 't must be. For you, Tom Plainsey and Sir Robert Westford, receive a legal trial. Canbee and Hadland, we, for a precedent, will have you sent out of the land to dateless banishment.
Thanks, your good honour. We'll do you more good by cheating your enemies abroad than ever we did hurt by cozening honest subjects at home.
Good Uncle Gloucester, we commend your care for throwing out such rank weeds forth our land, whose weakened body hath been sick too long, wanting those helps that should have made it strong. Amongst whom, Lord Momford, you are not the least, and pray heaven you be the last, whom this wild bead, ambitious treason, thought to ruinate. But in requital of your more than wrong, we make you here our Lord High Treasurer, and Captain Westford, make you general of all our forces mustered up against France. Thus, our disjointed kingdom being made strong, each member seated in his proper feet. Let's in to praise his name, whose powerful hand protects the safety of our peaceful land.
And they all live happily ever after. And yes, this is obviously the beginning of that well-known enterprise under the reign of Henry VI of exporting all their reprobates to other countries, not specifically to do anything, but to undermine the states of other countries. That's not a thing. I'm just going with that. I do like Canbee's little thing at the end. So it's quite a lot going on here. I like the idea of this whole thing about choose the weapon that suits you best. And so obviously Momford, his adversary is Sir Robert, who thinks, well, I will choose a gentleman's weapon because this lower status person won't be able to fight properly. And he's going, well, I think you'll find I can choose a good weapon and will beat you all. Whereas Tom Strowd just it's basically picked up a tree. It's just presumably just goes, ah!
It's a big stick.
Comic potential as to what's going on in this. I suggested in the chat that one of the reasons why Bess does not appear here is that the actor is perhaps doubling as the king. If the king, because Henry VI is supposed to be quite young at this point, so if it's a boy actor, then and we got a silent Lady Eleanor on, but where Bess is not on, and it claims she's on, but I think it's a lie. I don't believe it. I don't believe it for a second. So yeah, there's. They could just even if you just give her a line of dialogue, it feels very weird that doesn't say anything at all when you could. So I'm going to use that as an excuse for the slightly odd resolution as the way that all lands. So in the sense, Bess doesn't at least get married off to Strowd, doesn't get married, but does to Captain Westford, who on paper is at least a decent chap, but at no point, of course, does Bess get any kind of say in that. But within the logic of the play, Captain Westford has been presented to us as this perfectly nice person. But actually, I kind of feel the play doesn't need to marry her off at the end. I think, do we need that? Just have the bad people sent to trial. I worry about the legal trial for Tom Plainsey and Sir Robert Westford. They can afford decent lawyers. I feel like they'll get off. And then the others get dispossessed. But yeah, and of course it's all dependent here of this thing of who's got the most money. It's this wager on who's got the most cash, and of course the one who has the most cash is the beggar, who then in a moment that for modern ears always just sounds wrong. Momford discovers himself. Bold Momford. Yeah. There's a lot going on in this final scene as it's trying to tie up loose ends in a way that fits the conventions of the time. And mostly, I think, within the conventions of the time, it does the job. It's just more that we're looking back going, yeah, maybe you could have done a bit more with that bit. Alexandra.
On the subject of Tom's kind of evolution as a character, there is a point where he says to his father, "This waste of money that you have just done. If I'd done that, I would have had such a scolding of you." And it's such a wonderful moment it's a complete reversal from their situation at the beginning of the play. And it shows so much growth and so much development. It's great. And also he has this, again, something that we I think appreciate as a modern audience, where he has grown as a person, but he didn't get what he wanted, which is he's got that marvelous speech after Bess has been offered to the highest bidder and then given to that among you who loves me most, which is just another thing entirely. But after that's happened, Tom Strowd has this wonderful little if you'd married me, you would have had so many oxen, and you would have not have been drawn around in a cart, but in a I can't remember what he says.
Going ambling nag.
Yeah.
There we go.
Saddle.
Yeah.
So it's sort of bittersweet, but also it feels like a really clear sequel hook. Those two villains are going to go abroad, where we're going to do more villainy. These two villains are going to be put on trial, where they will probably escape because they have money. Tune in next week.
Yeah. Who will Tom Strowd offer his 4 yoke of oxen and 3 team of cart horses too? It's not a bad offer. I think you could have worse, as it were. How did we? I liked the king. I was enjoying the king. There's something nice. I think Stephen put in the chat the attention span of a kitten. It's just there's something. It's sort of historically not inaccurate, but it's also quite charming. Thoughts about this late intervention by a king, of course, whom is mostly negotiated with Gloucester here. And of course, we have the Cardinal plotline is sort of sewn up. I would say sort of sewn up because, of course, it's this traditional thing of what kings do. So, you two people who hate each other, shake hands. You're now friends. That's sorted, isn't it? Right, let's have a cup of tea. It's just going, if this was at the beginning of the play, we know that would lead to war, because we've been here quite a few times now. So, yeah. Thoughts? Lynn, are you...
Yeah, I have a lot of sort of scattered neural firings. I disagree about Bess. There's a line that says, "Come hither, Bess." I think she's on stage.
Yeah.
But it is weird that she's talked quite a bit and has some really great language up to now, and now she says nothing. So that is weird. There's like some things in this text as it is that seem kind of unnecessary. Do we really have to marry young Plainsey off to Sir Robert's daughter and then have her die off stage? Does that even need to happen? Couldn't that marriage just kind of never happen? So like that offstage death, I find troubling. It just sort of makes me sad because I liked her. I don't know. There's a lot of, and another sort of weird tonal thing, and I don't know, this is maybe me reading something into it that isn't there, is that, this is taking place during a historical event that the audience presumably would have known a little bit about, and we're saying that the Cardinal and Gloucester have patched it up, and we know historically they never do. So, I mean, is there this sort of ominous undertone? Everything looks good, but actually we've got a war in the background. We know we're going to lose our holdings in France. We know the king's going to basically have a psychotic episode and stop being able to rule. Is that present? Or is it not?
Yes. Is this a history play, or is this a play set in history? which is sort of we've had quite a few texts like that recently where we're sort of going, it's nominally history, and this feels like it's got more feet in history than other plays that have been more tangential. It does feel like, you know, that Gloucester and the king, and that they actually feel like they come from history and they are identifiable as that king and that Gloucester and that Cardinal. It does feel like this could have happened within the context of a wider history arc, more so, but not necessarily quite enough. I think you're right about the sort of, I was talking earlier about sort of these flanging edges just sort of flapping around, I think there probably is a slightly better production come out of some tweaking. The only problem with some of the tweaks that I'm sort of looking at it structurally to do is it would possibly remove a female character, which, you know, is always a bit of a thing I don't really want to do, because I don't quite see how I can big them up. Certainly in terms of casting, we can always just cross gender, so that which we do anyway because of the nature of the text. But yeah, there's that question of, do we go anywhere with the Gloucester and Cardinal thing? Do we trim that back? Do we need that scene from earlier in the play? Is that a bit much for where that plotline goes, which is literally nowhere? I mean, it just gets mentioned in passing from now on. After that initial scene, which was quite engaging, it was a really nice scene, but it's sort of like, does it destabilise the rest of the play? Do we need it? Do we need to focus on? Do we need to get to Tom Strowd earlier if Tom Strowd is so important a character within the text? And, you know, where do we move little bits about? Because otherwise, you know, there's still a lot to enjoy. There's still a lot of fun. Stephen?
Perhaps there's two, well, maybe not competing visions. One was touched on yesterday, I think. So we have a sort of idea of history as something that you might find in books, but there's a very powerful pull of back then as being a merry world. I can't remember who referenced it, but somebody referenced Robin Hood yesterday. And so, you know, we've got two senses of history, if you like, in the same way that we might speak of the Victorians and the Dickensian as sort of it happening in the same space, but sort of not. And so we've got the swashbuckling and virtue in peril, and is he a magician or just very good at disguises, and conny catching and stuff, which is all kind of timeless stuff happening under, you know, sort of Sean Connery's off at the Crusades, as it were. You know, there isn't a firm hand on all of this. But on the one hand, that's really great, because back in the merry world, it all gets sorted out. But at the same time, we have, you know, given the history of the stage at the time, perhaps, you know, we've also got a nod to historicity. But it's like a mashup of two different kinds of historical play. In the one play, isn't it? You know, we have these straight stories set in the merry world, which is some kind of generic time where you can talk about friars and nobody goes, what are they? You know, it's kind of sort of Chaucerian type medieval. But at the same time, we have another sense of the past and another sense of a historical play on the English stage, which is by and large doesn't have quite so many gags in it.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is there is a certain amount of riffing this is doing on, you know, that meta theatre joke, because we were talking the other day about, you know, when they were talking about when they're at the puppet show and you've got constant references to Tamburlaine and other things that, you know, that there might be more explicit meta jokes about history plays as well within this text, and, you know, certainly we've noticed quite a few echoes, and within this scene there's quite a few echoes as well, to other texts that and also texts that may not have survived as well, because it was, you know, still a reasonably popular genre by the time this play comes out, though it's starting to definitely fray around the edges, and people are doing different things with history plays at this time. So maybe it's part of that as well, this attempt to try and rework what a history play is, which we've discussed with other plays from orbiting this. Any other thoughts about the close of the play before we go into final thoughts? Slightly more serious, thinky faces today. I definitely get that sense of, you know, it hasn't been a disaster, but there's a lot more questions than answers about this session. Alexandra, then Lois.
I put it in the chat, but actually I want to ask the question outright. It might it feels to me like a very Georgia Green structure, and I mentioned this yesterday, and it turned out to turn out the way I suggested. We have Gloucester sort of starting and ending the play in a leadership position in the king place. Even though the actual king arrives, he's still going, Uncle Gloucester, how are we going to solve this? Which we had in that, and we also have this sort of idea of what's happening not behind the scenes, I guess, but I don't know how you phrased it, in the, on the offside of history, the place where we're not looking, but during that historical time in the merry world, which again parallels that. So I'm wondering whether this is a structure that works and so gets used a lot, or got repeated because it worked, sort of popularity wise, or if there's anything in that, because it's Georgia Green is explicitly a Robin Hood story, going back to what Stephen was saying earlier.
Lois.
Yeah, you could say that particular type of ending derives ultimately from the mystery plays and ending with a lost judgment, because something like this happens in a lot of plays. It happens at the end of Every Man in His Humor, although there it's just Justice Clement. People are kind of brought together, and somebody says, you're good, you get married, you're an idiot, we're going to humiliate you, we're banishing you, and so on. I mean, it just seems as if it's almost the equivalent of a curtain call for everybody, with some people getting booed and some people getting applauded. So it's not, the Robin Hood structure kind of repeats that. I mean, certainly the point of the Robin Hood legend is the disguised king and then revealing himself. I mean, the Robin Hood stories all have an element of disguise in them. What I find rather puzzling here is that we just have a stage direction saying that Momford discovers himself, which seems odd. And we have it right at the end of a very, very nice speech by Tom Strowd, which would certainly attract attention. I just wonder if Momford is supposed to go behind a pillar or something and come out in gorgeous costume, because otherwise it seems very odd that he doesn't say anything. As he doesn't say, I am Momford, he must do something fairly spectacular at this point, I think, not just take his cloak off.
Yeah, is it a case that the reason why Tom Strowd has this relatively lengthy speech is because the reveal in his final costume is going to be a bit more fiddly and complicated, and in fact Tom Strowd is expected to improvise if the speech isn't long enough. So it does feel, whereas the earlier ones were much shorter, it feels like this is a much more fiddly costume that he's got to get into. There's points that need to be done up. And it's going to be a bit more spectacular. So yeah, because otherwise I was looking at that going, is there something missing? And it's the kind of scene where I'm sort of looking at it going, yeah, there could be some little bits and bobs that I'm sort of wondering about, whether because it does feel quite fleet of foot. I mean, we've managed to read it. You couldn't double it to this degree, but we've managed to get through the script reasonably well with 6 people. It does feel like its capacity to be contracted might be slightly greater than it at first appears. So I'm wondering about the nature of this performance text and its utilisation. But that's more for future structural analysis to see how it all actually bounces together. Anyway, we're into final thoughts to see where we are. Sarah, you've been the king today, and you've been about. You haven't necessarily been giving the play your full attention, but any final thoughts about the play overall, as well as your part in it, as it were, your part in its downfall? Sarah.
Yeah, I very much enjoyed this play. It became a little bit more problematic today, but I don't know. I was interested in what Stephen said about the two sort of versions of history, and I tend to like plays where those two, like the lighter Merry England kind of play, and the sort of darker, more kind of like the play that's full of foreboding and oh God, what's going to happen. I kind of tend to like plays where those two meet. I don't think they necessarily have to clash. But with this, I do actually feel that if I was going to direct it, I would probably cut out the more problematic elements, and go for a full-on Georgia Green Merry England spectacular. And the reason for that is partly because of something that I think Stephen said yesterday about the stakes. The stakes are not very high in this play, but they don't need to be, I don't think. And somebody, it might have been Alexandra, said something about, modern audiences are used to more of a roller coaster. But I don't know that that's always true. I think it is true a lot of the time, but I'm thinking more about TV than plays. So perhaps, it is a different audience, but I'm thinking for every thriller or, really critically acclaimed edgy piece of TV that there is out there, every crime drama, every sort of tragic drama, there's also a Great British Bake Off. There's something which is comfy and okay, theoretically it's a competition, so there's a little bit of suspense, but nobody really cares who wins. Nobody's there for the competition. Everybody's there for the niceness. Everybody's there for the kind of feel good comfort of this format, which we know exactly what is happening, and we just enjoy it, and we want to have fun, and people are going to be funny, and we're going to enjoy that, and people are going to be nice to each other, and we're going to enjoy that. And the people who aren't nice to each other, well, we know they're going to get their comeuppance, they're going to get sent home at the end of the round or whatever. And I don't know, I think this is maybe the play equivalent of that. I think it's just kind of really fantastic theatrical comfort food, and very enjoyable. So I think that's the direction I'd be tempted to take it in, really, which is kind of, normally I'm like, yeah, let's play up the darkness and make a point of it, but actually sometimes it's just better to go with the whole cream cake option. And I think that's what I would do.
The play does, I don't think, wants to linger on the darkness. There are, some very serious things in here, and it's just that may throw us for a loop. It may be actually in staging work perfectly well and be fine. I think that's one where you sort of suck it and see. I think there is that case of saying, what is our ideal running time for a comedy like this, and actually that sort of starts forcing dramaturgical interventions on a text like this to say, well, look, we probably need to trim X amount of time out of this. Well, what's going to start disappearing? And also we might want to tidy this up. But are we doing it to I think the end is, it is a play that is structured about a series of fight scenes. Going back to the Robin Hood model. I mean, so it's full of adventure and action as well as comedy. And yeah, so I think that comfort food thing may be that thing of deciding what we're going to give out, or what a producer would give out. But then maybe somebody else has a different vision. Let's see what else the room has. Alan, do you have any final thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a play with hidden shallows. There's a lot of fight scenes, as you say. There's a lot of cosplay. I mean, quite a lot of it does remind me a bit of Panto. You've got Canbee and Candu and Hadland, or whatever the names are, the broker's men. And, the final scene, which is the traditional full costume, everybody on stage, Panto walk down, potentially adding up with a wedding. So, and I think the thing is that if played at pace, there's an awful lot of things that we've discussed at some considerable length, which would just whiz past the audience, and they wouldn't actually remember them until they were about on their third drink after the show or driving home.
Yes, and I think it's important to say when we're talking about hidden shallows, is that this is still also, if we're saying it is something that isn't trying to provoke us into too much thought, that doesn't mean to say it's not incredibly well structured and well put together. It is a very, very efficient script a lot of the time. We haven't noticed too many big issues with how it's actually put together, because it does present us with character. It does give us something to play. It gives an actor something to play with. Occasionally it's dropping the ball, I think, structurally, but and that question of tone. But that's more a question of art and where you want to take a text.
Yeah.
Lois. Sorry, Alan. Yes.
The other thought I was going to put in is that you can't really describe it as a history play because it lacks the essential ingredient of the xenophobia, which you almost always find, apart from the framing device at the beginning of the French Wars. But normally we just get gratuitous Francophobia or...
We had the Switzer at the beginning. There was a little bit there.
Yeah,
yeah.
Yeah, and we did have some other stuff that could be cut in the middle of the play as well. Yeah, it managed to sneak some of that in, but it wasn't the "let's kill the French" in great abundance style that you get in other things. Lois.
I mean, I see this as rather like Look About You, and Look About You I see as a prequel to the Robin Hood plays, and this actually I think is probably a prequel to Henry VI. I mean, part one, and yeah, I know.
We'll say,
Yes.
by those associated many other authors who we love. Yes.
Yeah, and probably the same people. I mean, we don't know the author of Look About You, but it seems very likely it was Day and Chettle, and maybe Houghton, who I think has been mentioned as a possible author of this as well. And Houghton did write a play which was probably a sequel to Look About You, about the humorous Earl of Gloucester's conquests in Portugal. And he's saying at the end of that play that he's going to go off to Portugal and have some conquests. Yeah, I think it's also a quick change play with a lot of people in disguise, which is also what Look About You was. And, I think the audiences knew pretty much what they were going to get. I agree that the use of Kate is appalling. I mean, to introduce a character totally for the plot and then just drop her. And the fact that her own father doesn't ever say anything about the fact that she's dead and that it's his fault, essentially. I think that probably could just be cut, because it would, I think for a modern audience, that would certainly be noticed and be depressing. And one probably could cut the Gloucester-Winchester Eleanor thing, because I suspect it could be removed pretty easily.
Yes, it's almost like we've got a few really nice, interesting scenes that we could play around with in almost in isolation and build another play around, because they're quite interesting things. But this play has no interest in doing anything with them. Mm-hmm. There's an interesting play musical I suppose we could do called "Kill Me, Kate." Lynn, any final thoughts?
Yeah, too many probably. And I am definitely in line with Sarah on this one. I might have been too exercised a moment ago about the sort of background history of the 100 Years' War and the failed reign of Henry VI and the upcoming century of dynastic conflict, particularly on our side of the herring pond. I don't know that knowledge would necessarily be at all present or in the forefront of your audience's mind. So you might be able to just lean heavily into the merry world aesthetic and not worry about the history play. I think that could be done. And and the structural things, particularly with the women, those are fixable. I mean, you either signal that Westford and Bess are interested in one another somehow early on, or you kind of cut that part and you have the king say, don't worry, we will find a suitable match for your daughter and someone who will genuinely love her. And all the courtiers in attendance are like, oh boy, Bess, she's so hot. We can't wait, So there's like lots of gorgeous, well-to-do, well-placed young men on stage about to compete for her hand. So it's like she gets to take her pick. It'll be fine. And you can just like have the marriage with Kate never take place. Like she keeps refusing to actually say I do at the altar. And the king just says, I'm going to use my authority to basically nullify that contract. It never happened. So some of those structural things that are troubling, I think are pretty fixable. So yeah, I think it has a lot of potential, and Tom really does come in onto his own in the end. That I need a sword, I need a dagger, give me a good solid club. There's almost a little Hercules vibe going on there. So there's something really sort of ordinary yet noble about him in that last speech about the sort of the joys of the ordinary country life. My mom's going to teach you to make pancakes. It's going to be awesome. Yeah, that could just, I think, just be extremely charming.
Briony, any final thoughts?
Yeah, it's a tricky one because I would really like to see it done with more speed, or be involved with with reading it with more speed, because with how much I loved it at the beginning, that's faded a little bit, and I don't know how much of that is just because it's been stilted because we have to stop and talk and explore it. And I don't really know, because there have been some great moments today, but I just don't. I'm not as in love with it as I was on the first session. But Tom's been fantastic today. I want all of his phrases. I'm going to write them all down after this and start trying to use them in my everyday life. The characters have been, some of them have been really fantastic. It's a shame it's a bit of a sausage fest, and the use of women in the play hasn't always been as much as it could have been. But there's some real fun here, and definitely I'm really glad that I'm now aware of it, and I think there's a lot still usable in this text.
Yeah, absolutely. I will pass over to Stephen for Stephen's final thoughts while I magically disappear from the room. Keep talking.
Fine. Yeah, well, I've said my piece, haven't I? I was just wondering, towards the end there, and I was getting a little bit irritated with Strowd, and the rootedness of his speech in a world which is completely alien to me, really. This kind of world, this sort of subsistence farmer, as it were. And I look back over some of the other stuff like that in there, and I was struck by the ingenuity of it, and the peopledness of that world. It reminded me of something somebody once wrote about Ben Jonson, saying he's rummaging around in the gigantic lumber room of his imagination, and you never knew what was going to pop out next. And I think to do the play justice, if you were doing it now, you'd have to kind of get rid of all of that, because it would just make them sound completely. It would lose the vitality that's there. I think the vitality of the language, the kind of mastery of the proverbial, the speed of the responses to each other, all of that subtlety, I think we'd lose if you were just doing it now, because it's the classic thing that puts kids off Shakespeare, is all those strange words and strange concepts. So
that kind of day.
Yeah. Yes, I'm sorry. I spent 30 years watching them, the light fade from their eyes. Yeah, so that's it, really. It's just you can flip that round and say it's a genuine appreciation of the way in which this merry world. One of the things about this merry world is that the linguistic vitality in it comes from the people.
Mm-hmm.
I'll leave it at that.
Lovely. Alexandra, any final thoughts?
Several. First of all, I wanted to address the point about the female characters. There are four characters billed as in the dramatis personae, and one of them appears in 3 scenes but only speaks in 1. 2 more are single scene characters, and the 4th one is Bess. So and the of those 4, 2 are eminently cuttable, as we've been discussing in the chat. So actually there's a great, it's not just mostly leaning towards the male characters. There is a great dearth of actually plot relevant agency sort of laden female characters, which we are sort of perhaps more easily allowing to pass because we are used to this sort of narrative, but or to this sort of style of writing. But I don't know how that would work for a modern audience. I think that is a thing that actually would need serious considering before you were to put this on. I also think earlier on, yesterday or the day before, I was saying it sort of strikes me a little bit like one of those TV series intended for children, like a Robin Hood sort of series, and I think that might be a way of doing this, of putting this on, the sort of 6-part 30-minute short episodes, because it doesn't necessarily have an episodic structure. But if you were to sort of always end on cliffhangers, for example, or maybe 5 parts because it's in 5 acts, it would potentially build up its own excitement, and you'd forget by the time you get to the next episode, next week, that hang on a second, we never see Kate again. And then the Tom Strowd and also other characters having so much evolution, which I always love. I think that's different to a lot of the plays of this period. To my complaint with a lot of the plays of this period, that it doesn't feel like characters evolve. So that's a massive plus for me. And I think particularly what I was saying earlier about Tom being in a Jack Sparrow position, not necessarily because he's clever and always on someone else's side, but the fact that he's hopefully sympathetic in portrayal and interesting in unpredictability. I think that as a modern audience, that would really draw us in. But I do think that there are things that we perhaps as a group are much more willing to accept as oh well than a modern audience would, such as the resolution to Bess's sort of or actually the entire situation that Bess is in, where she's basically only there to be potentially married off to this guy or this other guy or this other guy, and eventually married off to the not highest bidder, whatever it is, the one who professes most sympathy to Momford. Who, am I wrong in this? Is he the one who's initially billed as private enemy? I'm wrong. True friend.
Yeah,
he is billed as the true friend.
Yeah.
Right. But yes, so I think it's got a lot. I definitely think structurally and in terms of how it is, how the language is constructed, I think it's got a huge amount of strength as something we could put on today. But we also can't completely ignore or kind of expect an audience to accept the things that we are accepting.
Yeah, I think there's definitely something better to be done with Bess in that final scene. Is needs to be created. I don't think we can necessarily. I certainly think we can also do more with Bess as a character as well throughout. I don't think there's much we can do about the situation itself, but I think there's an awful lot of playing around with the overall shape of where individual plot threads are going. There's a lot of dramaturgy work that could be done with this. It's not an absolute straightforward. I mean, you could, by and large, plonk it straight onto the stage and see what happens. But I don't think that's actually what you would ever do. Beyond as a sort of experiment to see, just to get the thing on its feet and see what actually does come out of it, which is sort of what we're doing here, which is to say what are our initial reactions to it before we go to further stages. Lois.
Yeah, I think with Bess, you could do pretty much what happens to some extent with Marion Falconbridge and Look About You. I mean, have her doing a bit more play acting because, there's that scene, I think early on after you've met Marion Falconbridge, where she and Richard are pretending to talk about how noble her husband is and how much respect they have for him and all that. And I mean, Bess's situation isn't like that. And she's obviously completely miserable at the beginning, but you could play her as somebody who dramatizes herself. I mean, she comes on to Bethnal Green saying that she's so miserable that she's going to do away with herself. And that's when she meets her disguised father. And then her treatment with Plainsey, trying to hold him off because she thinks something good is going to happen if she can just keep him going long enough. And then again, I think her treatment of young Strowd, thinking that he looks like a better bet, and again she'll just say anything to keep him quiet. I mean, I think you could make something of her anyway.
Alexandra.
That unfortunately the author already is doing, except with a different female character. Because that's the stuff that Eleanor has in that initial sort of romantic
Yeah.
plot line, which was so much fun and so exciting,
Yeah.
and then she never speaks again.
Yeah.
So maybe there's something in conflating those two and reassigning character lines or something.
Yes, I mean, just nicking some dialogue from elsewhere in the play, that's entirely doable. Anyway, we have seriously run out of time, so all that remains is say, one day we will come back. But till then, thanks to all the wonderful readers for their wonderful reading. Thank you very much, and goodbye.
Bye.
Eat a pudding's end.